How are you doing? I'm Martin from Gardens for Life and Birdland Homestead. So we're just going to have this Q&A. So it's a questions and answers session this is actually number 6, I think it is. Yes, it is. So we'll just hang on in there for people to join the live chat. Hopefully we'll get a few people joining. We did send out an email earlier on. If you're not on the email list yet, please do feel free to join it. It's free. And you can do so by just going to gardensforlife.ie/subscribe, or just put in your email address on the main page on our website. That'll do it too. You get a notification, a few emails a week, just about what's going on, what's new. So actually, Bianca, if you want to make a banner just saying that, basically copying the text of the ask about questions, what kind of questions people can ask, and just to type the first letter or the first word question so that in capital letters, so that I know that the question is for me. And I know people sometimes even chat to one another, and that's perfectly fine. We are spreading this broadcast across 4 platforms, actually 3 platforms and 2 YouTube channels. So we're on X, or formerly known as Twitter, and we're also on Facebook. Since it takes very little effort to stream over there, we might as well. And we're also on our 2 YouTube channels, Birdland Homestead and Gardens for Life as well. Thank you, Bianca. That's great. So Bianca is working away in the background now. She can highlight comments as well, especially if there's any kind of questions popping up. I may not get to them immediately because I may be in the middle of answering a question. So we answer questions, anything to do with homesteading or business, how to start a business as well, how to grow food using no-dig gardening or forest gardening, or chicken keeping. We also do home brewing and country winemaking, a little bit about solar backup power and lights as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. And if you come up with any more questions in the meantime, or if you're watching this after it's streamed live, you can always email me as well at contact@gardensforlife.ie just to send me some questions for next week's questions and answers session. I'd highly appreciate your questions because those give me inspiration and they give me material and give me an idea of what people would like to know more about. Of course, if you have been watching our videos for any length of time, you'll have a fair idea of what kind of questions to ask anyway, or at least what kind of things we're into. We do run a number of workshops and courses as well. So they're available on our events page. So it's just gardensforlife.ie/events. If you want to take a look there, you can come to events, but there are tickets. Some of the events are actually free, and these questions and answer sessions are also free, of course. But just to give you an idea of what kind of events we're hosting, because that might give you a better idea of what kind of expertise we have, and then you might have a better idea of what kind of questions we're able to answer for you. Oh, I better not talk too much right in the very beginning, because I'm going to have to keep talking for, well, we'll go for about somewhere around a half an hour to an hour. Usually we go about an hour, maybe even a little more. But there's no pressure. It's just kind of hard to keep it going when you're on your own. Like if it's an interview, it's easier anyway. So I've got to keep the chat going. And sometimes you'll see me looking to the side because I'm checking the chat. And I get all the chats from all of the YouTube channels and the other platforms. I get those all listed here. So feel free to leave a comment or go on the chat and leave us a question if you have any. So I actually had a question about the diesel heater that I recently, actually just before the winter, I installed it in the cabin. This is our studio here, so Bianca's music studio. And you can see the remote control actually, or right here. Do you see that there? That's the vent for it. So we do have a video about the diesel heater already, and it had quite a few views actually. I think 25,000 views. And we do have a few questions about the diesel heater as well. And we also are going to make a new video about the diesel heater because we got a little remote control. Look at this here. So the diesel heater is just outside, and it actually uses kerosene as well. We got this little remote control, and you can use that it's like a thermostat, so it'll actually it'll control your temperature in here. And at the moment it's too warm in here, so I don't need to turn it on anymore, so we won't have any noise issues. So Danny's asking, got a delivery of 12 tons of mushroom compost today. Well, congratulations. Just wondering what's the best way to deal with it while we wait for the right pH level. I suppose while it's ripening, or while it's breaking down a little bit, so that it's less acidic, so you can plant things in it. Currently, it's all dumped in a big pile. Should we cover it or split it into smaller piles? So definitely keep it in a big pile, because it'll break down quicker. With composting, you always want a bigger amount, is always going to break down faster, and because it generates more heat. You're going to see it steaming for about a month probably. And funny enough, actually, I didn't see that question on my own chat here. Oh, sorry, I see it now. So I wouldn't split it into smaller piles, just keep it in one pile. Now, when it comes to the summer, when things like grasses and weeds are going to seed around your garden and around your compost pile, I would definitely cover it with a tarp, just because I've had quite a bad experience leaving compost piles uncovered for an entire year. And of course, the grass seeds were blown in, and the grass covered the compost piles completely in a matter of about 6 months after that. So it's all extra work. You have to then get rid of the weeds and the grasses again. It's better to leave it open for the time being, just give it a chance to vent anyway, and to steam away. You definitely don't want to trap the heat, and the worms will occupy the compost. It will inhabit the soil life will actually come up from the bottom, and it'll actually inhabit the compost pile, and it'll make it better. It'll break it down more, and then you're putting that fertility with a healthy soil life into your gardens, and give it a good kickstart anyway. So yeah, so in the beginning it's very acidic, because it's just it's a chicken manure and straw, and usually that's what it is. A bit of gypsum as well, and compost. I have a few videos about compost there, if you just type it into our YouTube or into our website. Now let me see. Hello Steve, how are you doing? Let me see here. Does Phacelia have to be rotated every year? Thanks for highlighting the comment there, Bianca. What is Phacelia? I beg your pardon, I don't know what that is. I probably will know if I see it, but I don't know what it is. So let me see here. Yeah, so just give me another little comment there on what that is. I assume it's a plant. Oh, green manure. Of course, we don't use green manures. We just use perennials instead. But green manures are great, because I don't know about that particular plant, as in using it for green manure, because we don't use any green manures, actually, funny enough. But you are better off to keep something growing on your garden beds or on your grow space in your gardens for the entire growing season, because the plants is what feeds your soil life. The plants producing the sugars through the photosynthesis, and then the root exudates are being provided to the bacteria in the soil. And plants actually do try to attract bacteria and in the surrounding soil by producing food and putting it out there, any excess nutrients. And plants then go ahead or the bacteria actually break down some of those and actually create more fertility, of course, through their life cycle. And the plants have more nitrogen as a result. So a bacteria-based soil is better for growing greens and annual vegetables. But for woody plants and perennials, you're better off with a fungus-based soil. And that's mainly what we try to get to on our gardens, especially the perennial ones. We do add a generous amount of nitrogen beforehand, though, in the form of 5 or 6, or maybe even more sometimes, inches of mushroom compost, well broken down mushroom compost. That's at least at least 3 months old. Better 6 months is definitely better. A year is even better again. So if you have room for mushroom compost, and if you have money to buy it, I definitely stock it up, and I put it somewhere where it's not in the way, and just leave it there for next year. And you can also use some of it this year if it has sat there for at least 3 months. But with the addition of the kind of amount of nitrogen we import, the fertility that we import in the form of a giant trailer or truckload of mushroom compost, you don't really need green manures at that point. But we actually do grow perennial plants in between our annuals. Anywhere we have garden beds or grow spaces, even if we don't cover the entire garden with wood chips. I do prefer covering the garden with wood chips in some places just because it's lower maintenance, but only if there's trees growing, for example, fruit trees or willows, like for shelter belt, or fruit bushes, for example. Or rhubarb will do fine too in a wood chip covered garden grow space. But green manures are good if you have a specific crop that only takes a part of the growing season, not the full growing season. I would probably recommend that you maybe are better off to grow some other crop as a consecutive crop. What's that called? I can't remember the name for it. Not rotation. Just grow one thing after another in the garden after you harvest it, so that you don't need cover crops anymore. But obviously, in some cases, it might be better than tarpon, because, I mean, tarps are fine too. It keeps the weeds off your garden beds. And I've seen Richard Perkins's videos a lot. I've seen quite a few of those videos, actually. Bianca, could you get us a link for the people that inspired us on our website? If you just type in inspire on our website in the search, and we'll get you a link for all the people that inspired us. And Richard Perkins is one of them. He's a market gardener, of course, and more. But in that kind of scenario, if you have raised beds, which we don't use raised beds because it's a lot of materials that you have to buy up front. I would highly recommend tarpon your beds, probably even over the winter. But we don't tarp anything except for new ground that we're trying to establish, basically, and reclaim as such, just to smother the weeds. Succession planting, thank you. Thanks for that, yeah. That's what it's called. So yeah, no, succession planting is great because even anywhere that I had, for example, alliums like garlic, or by the way, garlic are actually in the leek family, so that's why they look like leeks. And we have a lot of elephant garlic in our gardens. And somebody was looking at our garden yesterday. We gave them a little tour, and they said, "Is that corn?" I couldn't believe it. It does look a bit like corn, actually, but no, it does. So garlic and onions can be harvested usually around just after midsummer. Sometime in July usually is when we harvest it. We don't usually always harvest all of it, but if I do harvest a bunch of it, I plant something else in its spot. And usually certain plants that are quite thank you, Bianca. That is the link. So you guys can go there and have a look at what kind of people have inspired us. We basically took all the best bits from all the best people in the world, including Joel Salatin. I'm not sure if he's actually on that list yet, but all the best people when we took a little piece and we designed it around our own life, I guess, and our own homestead and our own gardens and our own business. So if you guys have any other questions, please let me know. Anything about homesteading, growing food preservation, no-dig gardening, forest gardening, country winemaking. We have a country winemaking course tomorrow evening from 6 to 8. Let me know, or actually go to our website, to the events page, and you can still get tickets for that. There are still a couple of spots available. And we also have a garden forage walk on Saturday as well, from 12 to 3. So if you live nearby, it might be worth taking a look at our website. And if you're interested, we'll make sure we make it worth your while. You'll probably be taking home more plants and cuttings and whatnot, samples, to make the ticket price back. You know, we try to share the abundance. You know, we actually just try to figure out what does nature need to create an abundance, and then we try to provide nature with as much of that as we can. We are based, hello Sheila, we're based in near us Common Town, actually, just on the south side of town, 10 minutes from the town. So Roscommon Town in Ireland, not in the US. I know we do have an international audience here today. We definitely have a better turnout today too than last week. Last week I was actually still out in the garden potting up plants in the greenhouse. It was a kind of a rotten day. It was very cold and drizzly, and yeah, no. Hopefully, all the nettles that we pulled out today will be taken care of now. I think I have probably pulled out probably a year worth of nettles from the gardens in about an hour and a half today. That was something that needed to be done, because usually what happens in our garden, of course, nettles are herbaceous perennials, so normally they would die back because, you know, in the winter time, and then they come back from the base of the plant. But the winter wasn't quite that cold like it used to be, and nettles have fallen over in the wind, and then they actually rooted all the way along, just like a mint plant, like a rhizome, or maybe even like a gooseberry. It kind of tip layered, and it does definitely need to be taken care of on time. I have to go and do the same thing at our other garden. We have two gardens, one at our house at the homestead and one just up the road. So do we reuse the nettles? Well, first of all, we do like to use nettles for medicinal purposes, like for tea as an antihistamine, especially when one of us gets a nettle sting. We also have, sorry, not a nettle sting, insect sting or bite. And good old horseflies. Don't miss them now about the summer, but I am looking forward to the summer still. Nettles are very useful for soups as well. You can eat them all right, and you can even cut them back, and that'll give them a new lease of life. But we don't use them much. The roots themselves, we could dry them when they're big enough. We could dry them, and they're great for, I think, urinary tract infections. But don't quote me on that. Look it up yourself. Yeah, we have plenty of nettles on the edges of the gardens anyway. So, you know, just getting rid of the ones in the middle of the garden. While we're waiting to have the no-dig garden to be ready, would you recommend growing any of the seeds like carrots in pots, or just wait to plant them out in a few months? Well, that's a good question, Danny. Thanks for the question. Well, things like carrots are really the only thing that I would actually plant out directly, and I don't do it in drills. I would definitely plant them directly in the ground. I wouldn't bother planting them in pots. I don't think they do too well because it is a tap-rooted plant, so it'll just curl as soon as it hits either a rock or the bottom of the pot or even a tray. So it's just not worthwhile. What you can do though is, if you want to grow carrots, I wouldn't bother transplanting them. I'd get some of those supermarket crates, you know, like they're probably about, how do I say, about that size. I think 80 by 60 centimeters or something like that. And we have grown them before. We have grown carrots in a crate before, and we also grew strawberries very successful in a crate, or many crates. You can get them about that depth, somewhere around that, and also a bit deeper, but you don't have to. The carrots actually do really well in those beds, in those crates. All you have to do is fill it up with compost and sow your seeds on top. Just give it a light sprinkle, and then cover it with just a millimeter of potting soil or seed starting soil, just to cover the seeds. I don't ever do carrots in drills. For those of you who are market gardeners might think that's a funny way to do it. We just spread the seeds in a space and not tin them. Well, actually, we do tin them because you just sow them thinly so that we can just harvest them as we go. So when you do them in drills, you're only using a small section of your garden bed, and all the space in between is kind of wasted, unless you're growing onions or garlic in between to deter the carrot root fly. But you can do that anyway when you grow them in a garden bed instead of using drills. So Steve is asking, oh, Steve, you have bees as well. We don't have bees actually, but I see your thumbnail there. It's a beehive. So I do also use tarps. Let me read it over here because it's easier to read for me. The camera is kind of in the way here. I have the camera right in front of my face here, where the screen is. I do also use tarps and wood chips, but I'm really struggling with Scotch grass. I tried cardboard, but to no avail. Would you have any other suggestions to how to get rid of it? Good question. Chickens don't quite do it. I've tried chicken tractoring, and they do knock them back all right, but really the best thing you can do, you could tarp the area for a full year, but that would be very inefficient, I guess, and you wouldn't be able to make use of the growing space in that year. I think a year would probably do it if you tarp it, but if you put on enough cardboard, it will go. You got to get cardboard, good thick stuff from a furniture place, like a giant cardboard boxes that we get from a furniture place are like for wardrobes or for couches, and we just put those down and overlap them generously, at least 20 centimeters or a foot. And I would, the trouble is, of course, if you have put down your compost already, well, it's sort of too late to put down the cardboard, but you can also put down, you could put the cardboard on top of your existing grow space or your garden beds and then put more compost on top. You could do that too. But what I found was, as long as if you're starting new garden beds, you could put down a generous amount of cardboard. Let's say 3 layers of good thick stuff that you get either in a bicycle shop or a furniture warehouse. The other thing you can do is you could tarp it for a full year. That should take care of it, especially in the heat of the summer. Normally, we only do about 2 or 3 months in the summer or 6 months over the winter in terms of tarping. Or we use builder's plastic, but make sure you get the thick stuff, because the thin stuff is no good. It actually doesn't last even a season. The thick stuff lasts us at least 5 years, maybe even longer now. So we have another question there. How's the diesel heater going? It's going great. I was just talking about it earlier there, Jamie. So the diesel heater is what's heating this studio, and you can see the vent. Hang on. How do I point over there? Here. So the vent is here, and the computer is over there. And we have a little thermostat that I'm going to make a video about shortly. So this is a third-party company that actually makes these, and I'm going to be making a video about these because the company actually sent me one of these to try, and it works perfectly. So these diesel heaters are meant to be used in a van or in a truck or in a camper van, but they are perfectly fine for like a one-room house, for example, like a cabin, or even a studio or an office that you might have out the back of the house or something like that, or a caravan. It'd be perfect for that. In fact, we're going to install a diesel heater in our caravan. And of course, for those of you who don't know, you can use kerosene with the diesel heaters as well, and it burns even cleaner. In fact, in the UK, you're not allowed to use diesel for home heating anymore. And we use a Vivor diesel heater, and they had them on offer. I think they're only about €100 now. We paid a little bit more than that at the time. We got the one in October, and we've been using it since to heat the studio, and there's no comparison. We are getting fresh air in here, hot, warm, fresh air, and we used to use a gas heater, and it actually caused me all kinds of damage in my lungs over the years. I used it for 3 years, and I couldn't breathe at night. So don't use gas heaters at all for indoor heating. Because the fumes, of course, will go into the room. So you're better off to have something that has actually an exhaust and a vent going outside. But yeah, Steve, just to come back to the Scotch grass, is that how you pronounce it? Or Scotch grass? It is difficult, but I found that creeping buttercup is even harder. And then there's, of course, there's all kinds of different other weeds as well. But again, really all you can do is you could cover it with more compost, and just if it does come through, if you cover it with like 8 inches of compost or 20 centimeters in total, including what compost you have already put on your beds, it should be easy enough to pull it up. Like it should, once it comes through, it will probably it'll probably be easier to pull up because it'll be weakened by the time it comes through. Oh yeah, sorry Jamie, actually about the diesel heater. I'm going to make a new video about the new remote, but also about how the last 6 months of heating the studio went and how much it cost us. And surprisingly enough, it uses very little to heat this studio. This is 10 by 10 foot or 3 by 3 meters. It only takes about 10 liters of kerosene every 2 weeks in the winter. So that's not bad. Now, we don't heat it every day, almost every day, probably at least 10 days of the week. Or sorry, 10 days of the week, 5 days a week. So that's like for 2 weeks, that's 10 days. And we use it maybe, it'd be still warm the next day. It wouldn't be too bad. You might run the heater for like an hour on full whack. But after that, you can either turn it down or even turn it off and just turn it on every few hours. So again, you guys, if you have any questions for me, you're very welcome to ask them. We actually decided to do these questions and answer sessions just to be able to connect to our audience more. We've been making videos for 6.5 years, almost 7 years now, one video every week. So we have 300 now on YouTube. And you're very welcome to go back and take a look at them. Mainly, actually mainly gardening videos, but there is some homesteading in there too. But that's why we created a new homesteading channel now as well. Birdland Homestead is the channel. Please do come over and subscribe to it, because we've got like 104 or 5 subscribers now. We'd like to get some more on there. Actually on YouTube, we've got, just as we hit 300 videos, I think today, we have 7,000. We just about have 7,000 subscribers as well. I'd like to thank all of you who have been there, especially those of you who have been there for a long time. So thank you, Bianca, for putting that link up to the channel there in the comments. Now, let me see. I have another question here. So about the latest video. So I made a video today. I put out a video today about the rodents actually eating up the seeds out of the trays in the greenhouse. Cheeky buggers. They went for the pumpkins and the courgettes first. And of course, and they didn't touch the rest of the seeds in there. There was like literally thousands and thousands of seeds planted last Sunday. And they didn't touch any of the rest of them, only the pumpkins and the courgettes. And our 6-year-old boy actually asked, how do they know what's in the tray? They can't read. So, of course, they can probably smell the seed through the soil. And I've had to remove what ones have not been, thank you, Steve. I've had to remove what trays have not been eaten yet. So I'm put those on a windowsill in the house now. So keep them safe, at least while you're germinating, and grow them on a little bit. Please do hit the thumbs up, whatever you're watching this on, because it'll help for the algorithm to show it to more people. It'll be a great help, and I'd like to thank you if you do. So yeah, no, so we're starting plants from seed, as well as just a random selection of mostly perennial flowers and some annual vegetables as well. And we're going to be planting those mostly into our new garden, which we're going to be establishing. So we're going to expand our existing garden. For those of you who have seen the bigger garden, which is not at the house, that is beside our big greenhouse. And we're going to be using 7 piles of compost that we had delivered both 1.5 years and half a year ago. And those we're going to move with the help of our friendly neighbor with the front loader of the tractor. And we've already tarped the area where we're going to start our new garden. And we're going to put down a generous amount of compost. Hopefully we can cover the area with at least 4 or 5 inches. That's kind of the minimum I do. If I had more compost, if I had way more compost, I would do 8 inches of compost or 20 centimeters. Just to beginning anyway, when you're establishing it, that way you don't have to move compost with a wheelbarrow for at least 3 or 4 years. If you're starting off with 20 centimeters worth, you don't have to move it by hand with a wheelbarrow. I wouldn't bother topping it up, at least for a few years anyway. But if you're starting off with 4 inches worth, you probably would want to add an inch every year, especially if you're exporting fertility in the form of vegetables or produce, especially if you have a market garden and you're growing a lot of annual vegetables. You see, compost does actually get used up, and you might think, Jesus, 12 tons, 15 tons of compost, but the vegetables do actually use it up. And I always say to people, a pile of compost in your backyard is better than money in your bank. At least what money it costs to buy the compost is like somewhere around 200 or 300 euro for a big load of compost. And you can be assured, by my calculations, just by doing it in my head, I think you can easily grow several thousand euro worth of vegetables, maybe even 5,000 euro worth of vegetables out of just one pile of compost in a matter of 2 or 3 years. So let me just have a look here now. So Una here is saying, I offered you some cardboard boxes on the Roscommon reuse group. For some reason, couldn't message me. That may have been Bianca. Bianca's on the chat here too, actually. Okay. Yeah, we can try to arrange that later. I mean, we usually get cardboard, Una, from the furniture warehouse out the racecourse road in Roscommon town, and we just get a whole van load of cardboard, and we fold it all into the van, and so it's completely up to the ceiling. And there usually be very large pieces of cardboard from, say, wardrobes, for example, or couches. And they're handy because there's no holes in them, and there is very little tape on them, and it's brown cardboard as well. So you can use that to cover your grasses, and you can overlap it well, but you won't need to overlap it as much as when you're using smaller bits of cardboard. So it's handy to use very large pieces, so that it's just quicker to cover an area, and the grass will have less chance of coming through. Bindweed, mind you, though, always finds a way through. Even if you overlap it a half a meter, it doesn't matter. So, folks, if you have any questions, please let me know. You can leave a question in the comments. Let me see here. So, Steve, do you want to ask me any questions about business? You were saying that you'd like to do something like that. I won't say any more in public in case you don't want people to know, but if you're very welcome to ask me any questions you have about business as well. Like people often ask, like, well, what are the basics of business? I could actually make an entire show just on that, but I don't mind having a mixed show as well. There's something in it for everyone, and hopefully people will be able to watch these afterwards as well and benefit from them. We might even actually cut out questions and answers out of these long 1-hour sessions and put them up as shorts as well, if we can squeeze them into a minute, that is. So yeah, so that's the basics of businesses: production, marketing, and sales. You got to produce something of value, like a service or a product. And a product could be a physical product, like a hard product, or a soft product, which is usually something that you like content or courses or whatever online. And or it could even be that kind of thing. So your services could be consulting, or it could be say any kind of service, like, for example, you doing work for people or whatever. And so marketing is, to quote Jack Spirko, actually, is the creation of a belief, and sales is the transfer of that belief. So marketing is either when you're tapping into an existing market or you're creating a whole new market. That means you're letting people know that this thing is good and that you'd like to sell it to them. And when people commit a positive action towards your company, they will convert and they'll actually buy that. And sales is the process of actually taking care of the customer after the customer buys a thing, for example. So that could be in the form of, for example, orders, packing orders and getting those out, or it could even include customer service as well. So let me see here. Bianca, can you see any other questions there on any of the chats? And we'll see if anyone else has any questions. We might do some videos about gardening tools as well. We actually recently found out that Vivor it's actually a good company to get tools from. They seem to be fairly good quality. That's actually the company that makes the diesel heater too. We were very impressed with them. We had bought a few bits and pieces from them. Even though they're Chinese, they're actually much better quality than the average Chinese stuff. I won't say anything else. But we actually recently found out they do raised beds as well. Now, normally I'm not a fan of raised beds, but these are made of metal, like actually galvanized sheets of metal, like, you know, the corrugated sheets, and they're bent. So they look really nice, and they'd save you bending down too, because once they're tall enough, I think they're about 1.5 feet or so, and we could easily fill those with compost, because, you know, of course, with mushroom compost, you'll have plenty of it. And but do bear in mind that if you do use raised beds are fine. I'm actually not against raised beds, but as Charles Dowding always pointed out, the plants on the edges of the raised beds actually dry out. They're prone to dry out very quickly. But also, it's a lot of material you have to spend money on up front, and usually if it's wood especially, it goes rotten over time. So it is a lot of infrastructure, and it's money you could be spending on compost instead of materials for wood and making your raised beds. But these new galvanized metal raised beds are handy, and if it helps you, if you can't bend down, or if it helps you, if it makes you feel more comfortable, if it makes your garden look more neat or tidy, and you wouldn't have been growing any vegetables or whatever otherwise, well, then you're better off to use raised beds, of course, if you have the money to spend on raised beds in the first place. But you can always do one at a time. So I might actually buy one of those and just try it and see if it's any good, and we'll make some videos about it too. But of course, if you're using a raised bed, it's just a large container, really, when you think about it, although it is connected to the ground, so your worms can come up and the rest of your soil life. But like any kind of container gardening, it's an artificial environment, and you got to bear in mind that anytime you're growing a plant in an artificial environment like a greenhouse or a container or a raised bed, you do have to provide it with the essentials that it needs. For example, water. In the summertime, it might dry out quicker. It will dry out quicker if it's not in the ground directly. But you can also, you're going to have to refill the compost once a year, because the plants will probably be using up some of it, and it'll settle too as you're putting it in. Over time, it'll settle, and the soil life will actually digest the compost bit by bit over the year as well, and it'll make it better but smaller. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing raised beds or container gardening. I like container gardening because it can be done even if you're renting a house and you're not allowed to tear up half the lawn like we did in the house that we lived in last time. We do have some pictures on our website about our garden. And actually, let me see if I can find them for you. I'm just here on our website. Let me see here. Not quite, but I can show you here. Let me just see. So this is actually one of those videos that shows how we started off with our front garden. And let me just show you here what it used to look like. So we put down cardboard, you can see here. Hang on. So you can see we put down an awful lot of cardboard here along the edge of the garden. And that's our front garden, actually. And those are the giant monkey puzzle trees, about 70 years old. And we covered it all with wood chips, a good thick layer of wood chips. And that took care of the weeds anyway. And now it's still there. And that was 6 years ago. Can you believe it, Bianca? It's been 6 years. And so this is what it looks like now. Take a look at this. So this is actually completely closed in now. There was just no hedge at all. And a lot of this was actually just completely wide open space. Yeah, so you can do a lot with you can do an awful lot with cardboard, but if you're putting it down on a lawn, you can just use a single layer. And oh, thank you for watching the videos. I do appreciate that, and for leaving a comment. We do put down one layer of cardboard on a lawn, but if it's in a field, if it's very thick existing vegetation like the perennial weeds, for example, creeping buttercup, and of course the grasses, I would suggest putting down at least 3 layers of good thick stuff, good thick cardboard. So let me just see here. James is asking, how much do you get the used mushroom compost for? What size loads do you get? So I get as big a load as I can get, usually about 15 tons, 12 or 15 tons in a truck or in a tractor and silage trailer. And sometimes you can get it for extremely cheap, especially if you're friends with the fella that owns the compost or the farm. And but the fella that transports it normally would charge you. So to get a truck out to you, it all depends on the distance. If you can find a local, as local of a mushroom farm as possible to you, say within a half an hour, you could get it for €150 or maybe even less. It depends. If you live in the Midlands of Ireland, you're very welcome to send me an email to contact@gardensforlife.ie, and I'll send you back a phone number for Robert. He's from Tullamore, and he picks up the compost from Walderstown. So that's halfway between Athlone and Mullingar. And he can drive the compost anywhere in the country, really, but it is a matter of money, because I know if you want him to bring it, say, to here, that's like maybe 45 minutes from the farm where he picks up the mushroom compost. It's about €190 for the load. And 3/4 of that is the transport, of course. It is for a truckload. And there is a generous amount of compost in it. Yeah, if you just look up compost on our channel or on our website, you'll get some videos of what it looks like. You're in Donegal, okay. So hopefully in southern Donegal, because I know Alan from near Bundoran had a load delivered by him, and it cost, I think, €400 or €390. So if it's any further than that, it could be maybe not worthwhile. But there is a place in Monaghan that you can give a call, an organic mushroom farm. I have no idea. I've never ordered from them, but I heard of people that did. And I think it might cost you a little bit less because you're closer to you. But you'll have to ask, because once a truck is on the road, it's usually 300 one way or another. And the compost itself is only 50 quid. If you can pick it up yourself, you're going to end up paying way less. It could be 25 quid for a car trailer or 50 or so for a giant big load. And bear in mind that it takes probably an hour to fill the truck with a conveyor belt. And that the compost is fresh and it'll be hot and it'll be steaming for about a month if you keep it in a pile. And it's always good to keep it in a big pile just to get it to break down quicker so that you can make use of it sooner. We always like to say at least 3 or 4 months, 3 months minimum. If you want to start using it in the garden, I'd keep it in a pile for it to break down quicker. And you can also keep it for longer. 6 to 12 months is even better, of course. And it's really just a matter of money. If you're able to transport, if you can get transport for it, that's all the better. But I would be getting an extra load or 2 just for next year already, and you can get them to dump it somewhere where it's not in the way. Of course, if it's a truck or a big tractor and trailer coming in, you have maybe seen the giant silage trailers. you can always you have to make sure that there's access to your site, that the truck can get in and out, and that the truck will not get stuck. But if you have to deliver it somewhere into a field, and you know that the truck is going to get stuck, because the truck is usually back-wheel drive, unless it's the middle of summer and there's been a drought and the ground is like concrete, the truck won't go in the field. You'll have to get a tractor to deliver it. Of course, if it's more than a half an hour away, they just won't do it. It's not feasible with a tractor because a tractor is slower. So slower than a truck. So there was another question here. What time of the year do you need to get the compost? Well, if you want, depends on when you want to start growing. I always say any time of the year is a good time to start a no-dig garden, but just get the compost whenever you're ready for it, whenever you have space for it, and whenever you can afford to get it. I'd get it sooner rather than later because it is becoming more popular. Well, thanks to people like us, but we don't mind because we don't even mind giving our compost contacts to people, and we always do, because we can't even take all the compost those big mushroom farms actually put out. It's just spent mushroom compost that's like 8 to 10 weeks old. And just bear in mind that when you get it, if you want to get it for this growing season, you're going to only be able to use it in 3 months' time from when you get it delivered. That's something to bear in mind for sure. But that's okay. Even if you get it later, even if you get it in August, it's still worth getting. Even if it's only ready for August, it's still worth getting the compost, because then you'll have it for next year. Or you can still sow winter crops in it, say towards the end of the summer. So it's always worthwhile. Thank you, Bianca, for putting in that question. I see you're using the Birdland Homestead YouTube channel to put that comment in. That's good. Again, folks, if you have any questions about homesteading, food preservation, or anything like that, let me know. Or even growing food or home brewing. How long did it take whilst you were still employed to start a business? Well, I was, so the business has been going for 6 years, somewhere around 6 years, and I quit my job 3 months ago. So it was about, probably about, it's quite a long transition, but in the beginning, the business was only just something I was building up on the side. I was banking hours. That's what you want to be doing. You want to be, if you want to do gardening, if you want to do production is something useful, like, I guess, plants or food or medicinal herbs or anything like that. I would suggest starting small and starting on the side. I'd build up the gardens bit by bit. Make sure that you have a place where you don't have to move in case you do. If you're renting, we were renting and we bought this house about 7 years ago. The main reason for buying any house was actually not because we didn't really like the renting situation. We did like it. We didn't mind it. And thankfully, we bought our own house because, of course, the whole shortage of houses is a problem and the price is going up. So less fluctuation, that's for sure. But it's not the stability aspect. That's not the reason why we bought a house. It's mainly actually because it's not even for investment purposes, although that is a nice prospect to be able to own it at some point when you finish paying your rent to the bank. So as far as we're concerned, we're still paying rent to the bank as long as we have a mortgage. And that's fine. There's no problem with that. No problem with getting mortgages. We don't have a problem with that at all. But here is the reason why we bought a house or property. Because in a rented property, we couldn't do proper gardening, like growing trees, planting trees, because you couldn't bring them with us. And we did have berry bushes, all right, and vegetables and whatnot, but we could dig those up and bring them with us, and at least the perennials anyway. And we also couldn't have a studio like this. We could have had a tiny house. We didn't know about tiny houses at the time. This would have been about 9 years ago. Not too sure if they were that popular back then, but we didn't know about them anyway. That you could have had something on wheels on a trailer. That we were considering it, but just somewhere to put a more permanent structure. But coming back to the business. So build it up over time. Definitely don't quit your job and start a business overnight and try to go full-time immediately. You want to be able to build it up over time. Bank your hours, bank in hours. Every day you come home from work, when you're done with your kids, you can, if you have spare time at all, just put that spare time into the business. Every day, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever you can spare. Just do a bit of work in the business. It doesn't have to be, if it's raining outside, don't be out there working hard for the sake of working hard. Just go and work on your website, for example. Create an online presence. Create an audience. You got to create an audience. I mean, if you're not willing to go on video, and I have to admit, in the beginning, I didn't either. I didn't want to be on video. If you look at my earlier videos from way back when, I never showed my face because I didn't really feel like doing that. I didn't even intend on starting this kind of a YouTube channel, but I did it anyway. And I had a good response from my audience, and I built an audience over time. And guess what? Your audience is your customer base, or can become your customer base, any member of your audience. And that is if you're willing to put in the time and the effort and share your knowledge with your audience and actually put out content. And hopefully you're building, when you're doing that, you're actually building loyalty with your audience, and people usually want to give something back, and then they can do that in the form of, well, we're not a charity. We don't ask for people's charity. We don't ask for money for free or donations or anything like that. But what we do ask people to do is we try to provide them with a service, for example, or with like courses or workshops or even physical product like plants. We do ask people to actually, you can support us by just doing business with us, and we try to give you good quality and good value for money every time you do. And that is the most important thing, Steve. I think when it comes to building a business and people do actually eventually spend money with you, it is important to always provide people with more value than they expect. And that is really important. You're welcome, no problem at all. And we can talk again. I'll give you a call one of these days and we can talk at length about these things. But well, please do, Steve, come back every Thursday. It helps a lot to get more questions as well, so that the wider audience can also hear the answers as well. So Kevin is saying, is all mushroom compost organic? So first of all, the organic label does not necessarily mean that it's not poisonous. Organic growers are allowed to use all kinds of poisons. We don't use any of those. Whatever they're allowed to use, even natural poisons or whatever, or natural treatments, I should call them, we don't even use any of those. So the only way you'll know if the organic farm is actually, if the mushroom farm itself is actually organic, the one in Monaghan is, but we got mushroom compost from a couple of more local mushroom farms here in the Midlands of Ireland, and we've actually asked the fella that owns it, or the people that own it, and they said they don't use any kind of harmful chemicals so that people can actually use the compost in market gardens afterwards. And one of the two farms actually even has a soil test done to show that it is good compost. And by the way, so Kevin, we have never used organic mushroom compost, but I have been using mushroom compost from the Midlands, in the Midlands of Ireland here, for the last 25 years, since the year 99, since I came over here from Germany. I've been using mushroom compost and I've never had a problem, never had any pesticides in it, never had any weed seeds in it, never had any kind of anything weird going on, except for the odd mushroom growing in the garden. Like just button mushrooms might start growing if the compost has not been steamed, but that's no harm, right? It's only going to happen for a couple of months, and then that's all there is in it. There's be no carbon left in it for the fungi to consume. But here's the thing with mushroom compost. To me, it is the soil life actually inhabiting the compost within a matter of a month or two, and you have worms going into it voluntarily. We're not forcing the worms. We're not holding the worms at gunpoint to inhabit our compost. That to me, that's testimony enough that the compost is safe to use to grow vegetables in, and that we can eat those vegetables. So really, if the soil life approves, we approve too. Definitely worth considering is also if you are covering your gardens with wood chips or your paths with wood chips, I would suggest if you can get fresh wood chips, that is, it needs to be as fresh as possible, but maximum a month old. You get some King Stropharia mushroom spawn. We don't have any left. We need to grow a new batch, but hopefully I'll let you know, guys, if I can find another source for it, and you can grow those. You can grow these mushrooms that are really nice to eat. They taste a bit like steak, and they're also known as winecap or garden giant. I have a video on growing your own mushrooms in your garden. So if you type mushroom into the website or into our YouTube or Odyssey, we haven't actually linked this StreamYard, our program here that we're using for the live stream. We haven't linked it to our Odyssey channel yet and our Rumble. But if you guys are seeing this over there after this has been streamed live, just give us a chance and we'll be streaming live over there too. Hopefully we can get the comments from there too. I'm not sure if that works. But if you want to send a comment, you can do so on YouTube or Facebook. Not sure about Twitter, and we should be able to see those here. Thank you, Bianca, just for reminding me. We have workshops coming up. If any of you guys live not too far from Roscommon town, if you're within an hour or so, it would be worth your while to come to one of our workshops or courses. We have lots of them. We have grown food using no-dig and forest gardening. We've got homestead introduction as well. So that includes 6 different topics. You can check the website. So how to grow food, preserve it, keep chickens for eggs. And Steve, you'd know way more about chickens than I do probably, because you've been following Richard Perkins too. We got to get ourselves one of those the Eggmobile. But in the Homestead Introduction Day, which is happening in about a month's time again, we also got herbal remedies, backup solar power and lights, and we have home brewing in that as well. We also have a home or country winemaking workshop tomorrow. There's still a couple of spaces left if anyone's interested. You can get tickets on our website, just gardensforlife.ie/events. And geez, I've gone awful dry. I forgot to drink me water. I swear this is not vodka. Geez, when you keep talking for an hour, it just does you go dry, all right? James, yes, I have tried growing honeyberry. Unfortunately, I've never had much success with blueberries or honeyberries, but I just have never given them enough sunlight, and I believe they've been smothered in the garden by other plants, like a goji plant. I actually just had to cut back the giant goji plant in our greenhouse because it was getting very smelly, and it was just taking over the whole place. It kind of smells like rotten fruit. I think it's trying to attract beneficial insects, but that's goji, that's not honeyberry, totally different plant. The reason why I was telling you about it is though because I believe the goji that we had grown outdoors, it's great for hedging, by the way, because of tip layers. It kind of it grows tall and then tip layers, so kind of like a gooseberry, but it grows way taller, like 2 meters or 6 or 7 feet tall, and I think it's smothered the honeyberry plants. But I think the blueberries also were kind of shaded as well. So I'm going to transplant those. Maybe a little late this winter now, but since we are well into spring now. Let me see here. Oh, is that right? You can grow oyster mushrooms in wood chips. I did not know that. That's awesome. Thank you for that. We will get some. Any particular strain of oyster mushroom? Can you grow king oyster? Because we've eaten those at a mushroom forage day, and they were really delicious.
even better than King Stropharia, but we're always looking forward to King Stropharia every year. We've been growing them for about 4 years now in our Woodchip Island. That is a garden we have on our website too, if you type in Woodchip Island. And thank you, Bianca. So, yeah, no, we do have a video about mushrooms and actually planting mushrooms. I know mushrooms are not really a plant, but okay. Oh, I see. Okay, thank you for that. I will actually take a screenshot of that name. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. So we will try and see if we can get some oyster spawn, as well as some fresh King Stropharia or winecap mushroom spawn. In general, it's actually very easy to grow mushrooms in wood chips, at least those strains, but some of the other varieties are easier to grow in logs as well. We have tried shiitake logs and mainaki, and we have tried the lion's mane. That was unfortunately not a success, and we did have a big success with the turkey tail. Of course, that grows wild here as well, and it grows on dead wood. So, what do you feed your chickens? Chris is asking. Well, actually, that's a good question, because feeding a chicken a 100% grain-based diet is not a species-appropriate diet. The Department of Agriculture can say whatever it likes. It is not what a bird that comes from the jungle in China, that's been domesticated for several thousand years, would eat in its natural environment. So when we keep animals, we try to give them a space as natural as we can to what those animals grew up in originally. And even if they've been bred into certain breeds, still we want to give them a happy life. That's the whole point. There's no point in keeping chickens in captivity, but we feed them a mixture of things. So mainly organic oats that are food grade, of course. They're human for human consumption, fit for human consumption. So we give them organic oats from Aldi or Lidl, basically. Very little of it they eat, actually, funny enough. And we mix it with some water. So that kind of makes a cold porridge for them. And we also give them a few layers pellets. The organic layers pellets are fine. They've come back down in price. They went up to like €21 a bag. That's when I started looking into alternatives. But now that the chickens have been eating the oats as well, they don't really like the layers pellets much anymore. They don't even want to eat them. And we also give the chickens a lot of greens and weeds from the garden. So that's another function of the chickens. Not only do they get to run around, they have loads of space. We have a 50-meter electric fence, and that's for up to 30 chickens. I think we have somewhere between 10 and 20 at any one time. And that gives them loads of room to run and to spread their wings and to scratch away at the weeds and the soil. And usually you find a few worms and a few insects here and there. And they will also get some greens from the gardens. So weeds, like grasses especially, if you throw those in the compost pile, which we don't have any of, actually, we only have insect piles, but I may make a video about that separately. I also just throw all of those weeds into the chicken pen, and the chickens make sure those weeds don't come back. Because if you throw them in a compost pile, they're just going to grow again. That's what I found. That's why we no longer have insect piles, or sorry, compost piles. And we also feed them kale as well. So we grow a lot of kale, especially Taunton Dean, because it's perennial. And we just take cuttings and stick it in the ground. And we just let it grow and just take a whole plant or take a big cutting and just throw it into the chickens every once in a while, every few days. They do eat grass, yeah. They definitely eat grass. We found that they really need those greens. You can tell when you throw them any kind of greens at all, especially kale, they eat them up. They eat it all up in 10 seconds. Like, they're literally, you could give them a choice of organic layers pellets. I don't know if there's something in the layers pellets that they don't like. It could very well be just that. I know there's soy in them, so we were trying to avoid those. And sometimes I give them oats with water, so essentially cold porridge, and the layers pellets and kale all side by side, and they go for the kale first. Definitely they love spinach, yeah. And we wouldn't let them loose. Sometimes every once in a while we have a chicken jumping the fence and going around, rooting around in the paths and the wood chips for worms. That's usually the first thing they look for. But they will of course eat all your greens in the garden. And you know what? If your garden is big enough, maybe you can keep the chickens on a free range basis, but we don't. We just keep them in electric fence to make sure that the other animals are kept out, including the fox and our dogs. And the pine marten probably would not be kept out. It might be, but it wouldn't be a guarantee because he could fit through the electric fence. And by the way, Bianca, Vivor also does electric fences for chickens. So I'm going to get another fence eventually. And it has much smaller holes, so even pine martens may not be able to get through, not without getting shocked anyway. So that could be a good idea. So Steve, I do want to actually get I was going to get the fence that Richard Perkins is using because it has these uprights all the way along instead of just a pole every few meters. So the poultry netting is much better. It stands up better. The one we have now is kind of worn out, and we've been using it for nearly 10 years. It's good though. An electric fence is an investment for a decade. You can still use it after that, but I think the more modern electric fences for chickens are better because they they have they stand up straight and they have smaller gaps as well. So it's just called poultry netting. By the way, we use a 12-volt energizer with a 40-amp leisure battery or deep cycle battery. And we have a solar panel with Victron Energy charge controller hooked up to that. And currently it's 150 watts. And that seems to keep it charged now. So I don't have to walk around with a battery once a week. That helps a lot. All right, folks, we've been going for 1 hour and 7 minutes. Time flies. We have lots of people watching now at the moment. I do appreciate you all coming on. So, yeah, take a look at our website. Please do join us on our Birdland Homestead YouTube channel. We'd appreciate it if you subscribe there. And please, if you come up with any questions in the meantime between now and next Thursday, just email me, contact@gardensforlife.ie. Email me any questions you have, and I'll answer them next Thursday if you can't be there in particular. Thank you, guys, and please give us a thumbs up wherever you're watching this. I highly appreciate that too, because it'll help more people to see it the next time. Thank you. See you the next time. Bye-bye.